Hello and welcome back to the Demis Hellen channel. We're going to be creating a trance arp today, or a melody. I'm just going to do this sort of like really off the cuff. Just going to pick a key and then just build something so you can see how I do it, and at the same time you can copy it and use it if you so wish to. We're going to focus just on 4 bars. You can expand it if you want to, but we've done plenty of videos where we can expand it into 8 bars and even 16 bars depending on the style of trance you're going for. We're just going to stick to 4 bars for the sake of this video. So with that said, let's get started, and if you do have any questions about what you see, let me know down in the comments. Whoops, just future self here, editing the video. I forgot to mention that from now on, MIDI and presets from the video, depending on the situation of the video, will be available on Patreon. So we do the sort of like follow to learn here on YouTube, but if you really want to just download the MIDI and get the preset as well, you can just subscribe to Patreon and all that sort of stuff will be there, along with other things that you already know about. But if you want to check it out, link in the description. Okay, so we're in the key of A, and you can see here natural minor on the right, and this is just visually for you to be able to see that green is in key and the orange is not in key. So all you need to know, if you don't have a scale assistant, is all white notes from A to A. That is your scale. And we're going to work with half steps to sort of ignite an idea. And what I mean by half steps is notes like this in the scale, F and E, and C and B. These 2 notes are next to each other. There's no notes in between them, whereas the other ones will be whole steps. Like this one, you can't have this note because it's not in the scale, but it is missing a note nonetheless. So that is a whole step. These are half steps. So ones with notes between are whole steps, and the ones without are half steps. And these half steps, I don't know, you can add a lot of emotion and a bit of, spark a bit of interest, make the listener sort of latch onto your melody. It's a good way. It does it with me. I can hear it in the music that I like. Always utilises those sort of half steps, whether it's in the bass or whether it's in the top end of the melody. What I mean by this is, let's have a listen to F and E and then the root note A. Let's just move this along a bit. You can hear we've got quite an emotion already driving there, as opposed to maybe using something like F and D. Still sounds nice, but it doesn't sound tense enough to sort of like grip your attention, whereas having 2, like a half step, shall we say, that is going to generate a bit more tension. Especially if we don't start on the root note, and let's just say we start on F. So we're kind of mimicking this part, or maybe we could even have a D. So you can see where I'm going with this. We can start to build some really interesting melodic sequences here. Let's just say that, and then finally that. Maybe have that on the end. And I can hear you all asking now, how did I just pluck out D, F and A? It's a chord within the A scale. So if you just go a bit further up, D, F, A, it's a chord. It's something that you can obviously make within that scale. Let's have a listen. So all I'm doing is just mimicking that, but using it as a bass note and spreading them out across 4 bars. So I'll get rid of those. You can see D, F, A. And it's always a good way, or a good starting point. And you can see I'm using that triad sort of sequence. So I'm going to just manipulate some of these notes. And then I'm going to do sort of a relationship with this in the form of a triad. So let's try C and E. So we've got A, C, E. So that's quite intriguing. It does sound quite nice. Not refined enough, but if we just chuck that up an octave. So why this sounds a little bit weird is I like to have space in between here. It gives room for mid basses. It gives room for any sort of mid-range or lower mid-range areas to sort of operate. Very similar to how you compose sort of like orchestral music. You have your spaces between certain elements, so other instruments can fit in the frequency ranges that they belong in. And I kind of roughly apply a similar tactic to what I'm doing here with electronic music. So the problem here is we've got a lovely gap here, and then this one, it closes right down. It's far too close. So we could technically do two things. We can use the same notes and swap them around. So we could have a C at the top and an E at the bottom. So instead of EC, it would be CE. Or we can move this note down. Instead of this A, it can be an A an octave below. But I think it's going to sound a little bit weird that way around. But let's have a listen first. Okay, it does sort of work. We might go for that option yet, but if we wanted to do C and E instead, let's have a listen to how that sounds. Like this, so we're creating a bit of a double air gap here. So that might be your cup of tea, might not be your cup of tea. It's a little bit high on there, so let's just drop it an octave again. So an octave lower, I can hear another idea. Let's just duplicate this over here for now. In fact, on the duplicate, just really quickly, I'm just going to put this back to E and C. Like so. So we've got that original over here. And if we jump back into here, we can actually drop this by a half step. So there's the half step creeping back in, and we've got the F and the E here, and obviously we've got the C and the B. And this little half step is going to just drill a little bit of emotion into this otherwise steady sequence here. It's just going to drop that one note, which is going to sort of make all the difference. So you can hear it could go a million different directions at this point with the bass notes. I say a million, over exaggeration, but you can hear we could generate different ideas. You might even hear songs that you already actually know as well that might use this particular sort of like rhythmic method. So I like that. It might require this A to move. Let's just have this go to G maybe. There we are. I think that is it. That sounds really nice. Obviously, we're on a 4-bar loop. We could extend that to 8 and have maybe the A hold with that C in here. In fact, let's just do it. Why not? And then in the second half, we have that drop on the G. Let's just quickly glue these together. And let's have a listen. That's quite nice, but maybe up to the C on this one. So you can hear we can sort of really sort of supercharge different emotions within there. So that might resonate, that sort of like upwards rise and drop down might resonate a lot better with some of you, and others you'll think this one sounds a lot better and resonates better with you. So it really is about your individuality and how you can then sort of like program that into something a little bit more. Another good idea just before we finish up the video is we can have leading notes like this that lead up to the next chord. So let's just make this a bit more fully fledged in terms of bass rhythm. I don't know how low we can go on this now. We've utilized quite a few octaves. That's probably as far as I'm going to be willing to go, but hey ho, let's just copy these over. You can see it's just a note missing on end. That'll do. We're not going to do any sort of like velocity stuff or anything like that on here. Let's just have really, really, really quick setup with this. I'm just filling in that last note. And what I mean by these leading notes is having something like this. So we're utilizing the notes in between. If you can hear what I mean, it can get overused pretty quickly, so don't go too crazy on it. But we can do that. If we've used a bass note that's like sort of utilizing the chord that I showed you earlier, you have those notes in between that can sort of like really push the emotion of it. So up to you if you want to do that, but maybe occasionally we could miss that one and just have this one move up like that. It's entirely up to you, but you can sort of heighten and exaggerate the feeling of that melody. And just before we finish up the video, I just want to touch on sound design. You want a good sounding preset, a good sound to obviously make this with. If you use a really poor sound or a non-suitable preset for this particular genre of music, which is uplifting trance in this case, you're going to find out that it's going to sound not as energetic, it's probably not going to have that same feeling, and it's going to sound rubbish, and you might try and change the melody up. Get the sound right, get something that does suit the style, the genre, the way that you're building it. This is quite a short, plucky sound, which means as an arpeggiator, that is perfect. It can be used as an arpeggiator. If you're using something where there's quite big gaps between the notes, so like big hard-hitting chords, and you sort of hit in like the duh, 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 duh sort of thing, then you're going to use sort of like a really full super saw, something really heavy and got a lot of power behind it. You're not going to use a pluck, apart from when you're building those sort of like elements up, but the main part is going to be that huge sound. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know down in the comments, and everything else, you know what to do if you want to see more of my videos. And with that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.